Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3Iron and today we are taking a look at 6 builds for Metamorph League for 3.9 that hopefully, depending on patch notes please, will not get nerfed. So these will be 6 builds that you can take a look at and know with some level of certainty that they will be strong as starters. Now, a couple of little points of clarification as we get started with today's discussion. First off, if you're new to the channel, welcome. We typically do a video like this before patch notes hits with the express purpose of seeing if we get things wrong and trying to predict the meta and seeing a couple of weeks down the road whether or not we were right at all. So that's one of the fun parts about this. The second part about this that you need to be aware of is that each one of these builds has been specifically set apart and recommended for you as a league starter. In other words, this means that when the patch note goes live on your particular time zone, you will be able to select the class that's associated with this build and then play this build all the way up to and including maps. The vast majority of these builds can do all the way through endgame in terms of clearing content. That being said, because the Shaper is now no longer Shaper and Uber Elder is now no longer Uber Elder, just in terms of scaling and comparing damage, we're going to have new benchmarks for top tier clearing and for top tier endgame bossing in 3.9. And Metamorph League is all about killing bosses and combining them, and then Atlas of the Conquerors expansion is all about a rework of the Atlas. So we're not quite sure yet on the benchmarks on all of these particular builds for what they will mean in 3.9, but you can rest assured that all of these builds have been tested prior to 3.9 and are able to clear endgame. That includes tier 16 maps through the endgame bosses like Shaper, like Elder, like Uber and Zaro, etc. Okay, so that's enough disclaimers. If you're new to the channel, there are timestamps placed above my slightly balding forehead. So if at any point in time you just want to jump ahead and look at an Ascendancy class or review an Ascendancy class that we've already talked about, you can do so there. Each and every one of the of the build links is going to be provided down below in the video description. So if you'd like to go and read more and bookmark one of these builds because you're potentially considering playing it, or you do choose to play it and you just want to always have it ready for you, then I would recommend you do that. Those links are again available down below in the video description. Shout out to all of our new Patreon supporters, and thanks so much for all of your support. Okay, without further ado, let's jump right into these 6 builds. The first build that we're going to take a look at is a Templar build that goes into the Inquisitor Ascendancy. This is a Stormbrand Inquisitor. This is a very, very well-written guide by Thin. He does a great job explaining mechanics, explaining exactly the tree that you are going to progress through, exactly the choices that you're going to make in terms of what links to use, when to upgrade items, exactly what sorts of affixes it is that you're going to need at what point in time. So this is a great starter guide. If you have never played Path of Exile, and I've gotten a bunch of messages from newer players that have either never played POE or just getting started playing POE, maybe this is their second league or their third league, and this is the one where they really want to ramp it up, this is going to be the build for you to start out with. The reason why I recommend this one first is precisely for that reason. If you're new, or maybe you're taking on a new challenge, like maybe you've always played Softcore Trade League and now you're going to try Hardcore Trade League, or maybe you've always played Trade Leagues and now you're going to migrate over into Solo Self-Found. Whatever the thing that is new to you, whatever is the new challenge, playing a well-written, well-conceived, and mechanically solid build early on while taking on new content and learning the ropes of whatever new challenge it is that you've got is a great way to go. There's already going to be a ton of variation in the end game goals that all of us are going to have and all of us are going to get to experience. A lot of players are going to have to learn a lot of new things because we're all learning the Atlas again and all of the tips and tricks that are going to be prevalent for the next year with this expansion. So with all of those juggling and moving pieces, one thing that you don't want to be uncertain about is your league starter rolling into 3.9. Stormbrand is incredibly reliable in terms of its damage. It's incredibly friendly for clearing maps and for pack clearing early on. Its cast speed is incredibly friendly for players that simply want to increase their move speed or use a mobility skill to zip zap zooming around from map to map. So there is a lot of flexibility built into this and a lot of reliable consistency that's available by playing a Stormbrand Inquisitor. Particularly playing Inquisitor, you get a bunch of free extra damage that is maybe going to be replaced later on down in the league as you acquire more and more crit gear. And so, of course, starting early on, the Inquisitor is valued at several exalted in terms of trying to replace the amount of stats that you would get with Inquisitor by swapping off to something else. So it's really, really solid for its early damage and for its early league gameplay. Moving on to our second build, we've got an Elementalist Witch. I know some of you are just going to look at this and go, Iron, what? Why would you recommend playing an Elementalist? Is this Incursion League? Is it 2018? What's going on here? No, it is in fact 2019 and about to be 2020, and we are recommending this particular Elementalist that's built by Tornstein the Fallen. A couple of reasons why I would recommend this build. First off, it is an incredibly well-written guide. All right, just straight up, incredibly well-written. He's got everything put down into spoilers, so you can simply look and see, hey, where's the path of building? Hey, where are the particular video sections? Hey, why is it that my damage scales in this particular way? Hey, where is the gear that I'm going to be looking for? He does a great job of laying out and organizing his thoughts. Also, on top of this, because so many of you are looking at this and going, why would you recommend playing a Witch Elementalist? That's exactly why I put this at the number 2 slot for recommending this, because Elementalist is nowhere close to being meta. Therefore, items that are associated and close to being used with this particular build are going to be relatively cheap if you're playing in a trade league, and if you're playing in solo self-found, they're going to be very, very easy to acquire for you. So, playing with Incinerate while on an Elementalist gives you a ton of free damage and allows you to push as far as either finding items or purchasing items will take you. This build, again, can do all content throughout the entirety of the game. Isn't going to be as fast or as easy to level with as, let's say, your Templar, Inquisitor, Stormbrand. However, it is going to be more flexible and a lot cheaper because it is a well-known commodity to play the Stormbrand Inquisitor, and the Witch Elementalist, well, again, let's just face it, in terms of the meta and in terms of popularity, nobody wants to play an Elementalist right now. Like, you know, I think it's like 2 to 3% of Blight League played Elementalists, if that, and that's both hardcore and softcore leagues. It is not up there in terms of popularity. So, one of the things that you can do during a league start is take advantage of that and actually min-max the heck out of a build that is on an ascendancy that is not popular whatsoever, using skills that are not necessarily popular on a main 5 or 6 link. Incinerate has got exceptional damage for being on a 5 link, by the way. So early on, as you are acquiring more currency and trying to 6 link either a 2-hander or your chess piece, you can use Incinerate, and of course Incinerate on a 4 link is going to get you all the way through Katava into white maps and maybe even push you into yellow maps relatively deep and allow you to collect plenty of jewelers and plenty of fusings to then eventually get that 5 and 6 link. So I would highly, highly recommend this guide by Tornstein the Fallen on Elementalist. Again, if you're looking for something that's off meta, and maybe that's something a little bit off the beaten path. Our third build is going to be a Ranger Pathfinder. This is called the Zoominator. It is put together by Auto Matrix. So a couple of things on this one. First off, some of you, again, are going to say, wait a minute, Iron, why is it that you would recommend a Blade Vortex Pathfinder as a league starter during a league when it's going to be a mostly bow-dominated league? Well, to answer your question, that's precisely why I would recommend this. So many folks out there are going to be building with bows that any jewels that are going to have any kind of bow rolls on them are going to be incredibly high valued, whether they're basic jewels, whether they're abyss jewels, whether they're uniques. It's just going to be an insane market out there for bow users. It's most likely going to be the most expensive time to be playing a bow build. Does that mean that there aren't great bow builds out there? No. It just means that as a league starter, you might not want to use a bow build in order to scale up your damage and in order to scale up your currency as you begin farming in the game. So the Zoominator is great because this guy actually uses it to clear the labyrinth several different times. He's been able to reproduce sub 4-minute lab runs. Now again, sub 4-minute Uber lab runs aren't necessarily going to go out you and win any labyrinth races. However, if you're looking for particular helm enchants, like let's say any kind of bow helmet enchants that you then want to turn around and flip and sell in order to make a profit and then go build or continue to grow your particular starter character, you'll have the currency to do that thanks to the Zoominator. Now, the other thing that the Zoominator has got going for it is a Blade Vortex build on a Pathfinder, which means that you can scale up your flask effectiveness and dump most of your currency into well-rolled flasks rather than, let's say, dumping all of your currency into like 6 or 7 different items. Flasks, maybe you get 2 or 3 that really help carry the build, and you can go from there. Because it's a Blade Vortex build, it's a spell-based build, meaning you don't necessarily need to have a bunch of top-tier endgame weapons in order to really scale up your damage. You simply need levels on it, which you're going to put in by playing and clearing maps as quickly as you can. If you've never played a Blade Vortex character, I would highly recommend that you try this out. Blade Vortex has got a rather unique style of gameplay to it. Depending on the damage that you've actually got and the level that you've got on your Blade Vortex, you can do anywhere between 1 cast and simply move around very, very quickly using a movement skill or running, whichever is faster, or you can max stack up your Blade Vortex all the way up to the max stacks at 10 now, and sit on top of a boss and just watch them evaporate. So Blade Vortex is very, very handy for its gameplay style, either going faster and clearing whole maps and packs at a time, or styling it more to be a boss killer and clearing through the labyrinth several different times. I like to include a lab specific character in these sorts of guides and discussions, just because all of us are going to be farming Uber Lab early on, whether or not you're farming it for challenges and challenge completions, or whether or not you're farming the labyrinth because, again, you're looking to farm for particular helm enchants for your own personal use or for sale. It's great because all of your characters are eventually going to need to have the Uber labyrinth done, and so lots of other people will as well. So if you're playing in a trade league, playing a character that can reliably take down Izaro in the Uber Lab means you can be offering up lots of different services for other players who are paying you offerings to then go and do Izaro runs. You get multiple different keys, you open up as many chests as you can, you get a bunch of loot. And oh, hey, by the way, you still get to lab enchant some awesome helmet, and then every once in a while you'll sell it for several X, and then you're like, hey, this was all worth it. So if you've never played Blade Vortex, or you've never considered ways in which you could use the Uber Labyrinth as a way for your entire league bank to really get going, I would highly recommend the Zoominator for your consideration at the start of 3.9 Metamorph League. Our fourth build is going to be a champion duelist build. Now, those of you that were complaining when we were showing off the Ranger Pathfinder saying, hey, where's the bow build? Well, here's the bow build. So, this particular champion build focuses on abusing the impale mechanic and uses either tornado shot or barrage in order to either clear out maps or deal damage to bosses. Now, a couple of points here to begin with. Tornado Shot did, in fact, get nerfed in the past. It just did. 3.8, at the beginning of 3.8, they fixed a bug with Tornado Shot. Tornado Shot got fixed in that way, and so it did get nerfed. So, some of you, again, are going to be saying, oh, Iron, why on earth would you be showing us a 3.9 build guide that would be nerfed? Well, here's why. Because at the top end, it was already killing Shaper incredibly fast. We're talking in a matter of seconds. And so now, again, we're still talking about a matter of several seconds for killing Shaper at the top end. This is a build that you can level with, that you can start with, that you can transition to if you'd rather level with something different. Maybe level as a melee character if you'd particularly like to level as a melee character. Again, some of you aren't going to be interested in that, but many of you out there just like to level playing melee. So this gives you an option about when you want to swap over. Champion is incredibly strong and gives you a ton of free damage through the impale mechanic, both for boss clearing as well as for killing rares early on. Again, you don't need fantastic gear in order to take advantage of all of the damage and the defenses that a champion provides for you. I personally think that Champion is probably the most underrated ascendancy right now in Path of Exile, simply because it's diverse. It can give you damage, it can give you defense. You can combine those two. You can go all out one way or the other. You can go utility for a group or for a party. You can play it as a self-caster, as a self-attacker. You can play it as melee or ranged. You can play it even as a totem. There are so many ways that you can play champion. It is one of the last remaining vestiges of old POE that allowed you really to pick what you were going to do before you picked your ascendancy, and then simply find great things packed into this ascendancy that you could use on top of your build, as opposed to looking at things and saying, well, I've got this skill and therefore this ascendancy is the best ascendancy for the skill. Champion really is a jack of all trades, but you can't say he's a master of none because he's got master of metal on there. So there's a bunch of great stuff that's available on the champion that you won't find anywhere else in terms of ascendancies, in terms of their combination, packed right into the champion. Because of this, it means that it's very, very cheap to get started. Now, getting the top end damage, yes, it's going to be more expensive for you to do. But this build gives you something early on that if you want to farm lab, if you want to farm maps, if you want to farm bosses, it gives you something that you can choose what it is that you want to do and focus in on to begin Metamorph League, and then grow into from there. If you need to focus more on, let's say, defenses, you can spend currency that way. If you need to focus more on single target DPS, you can focus more there. So this build gives a great template and a great path to actually go from League start all the way to taking down the very top-end bosses that PoE Metamorph League and 3.9 Atlas, Conquerors of the Atlas, will have to offer. So I would highly, highly recommend this. Again, if you've never played a champion, you are missing out. Those of you, I know there are some of you right now watching this who have said, oh, I used to have a friend who played PoE, and they used to tell me about the glory days of PoE and how much of a different game it was. Play champion and see the diversity that it gives you and the abilities that you've got to play when you are champion, how you want to build and how you want to morph your build. This build gives a great template for you to interact with and to say exactly what it is that you want to farm. When we're starting a league, if you're not sure about your goals, because we're not sure how the Atlas is going to be farmed, we're not sure necessarily what the meta is going to look like, we're not necessarily sure about drop rates of anything, well, then a great game plan going in can be to say, I want to have flexibility to do X, to do Y, or to do Z. And the Champion Impale mechanic allows you to do all of those things with a lot of flexibility and consistency in damage and defenses. So would highly, highly recommend this build. All right, our fifth build that we are recommending for you today is, of course, a Saboteur. That's a Shadow. This particular lightning low-life trapper is incredibly, incredibly strong. It does ramp up in its cost quite a bit, but I wanted to include in this particular discussion at least one character that was going to rely heavily on energy shield rather than life. Because we are going to be playing such a massively dominated bow meta, most likely, in 3.9, at least that's everyone's best guess, since so many players are going to be playing with the new various bow skills that are coming out and the reworked bow skills that are coming out, and of course, because ranged is just good in general, I wanted to show off a character that would actually take advantage of the top right half of the tree rather than the lower right half of the tree, which is where a lot of players will be playing with bows and playing with rangers. So if you're interested in playing a Shadow, could I recommend you to play this Saboteur? Now, you can play this, of course, lots of different options for how you want to play traps, or just in general if you want to play a trapper or a miner. The reason why I picked this one, again, is because of the energy shield that is available, and it does start out relatively cheap. To get the top end, we're talking like 11,000 energy shield. It's going to cost you quite a bit, but to get started, it is very, very cheap. And again, this particular build guide has got a great walkthrough. If you've never played a Sabo, if you've never played a trapper before, highly recommend this particular build guide because he's got it spelled out from level 1 all the way through maps, exactly how you're going to level, what gems you're going to look for, what upgrades to keep your eyes out for, and then eventually how to transition from early mapping into late game bossing. Now, for those of you, again, who've never played a trapper before, some of the highest DPS, fastest boss killing builds out there in Path of Exile history are miners and trappers. So, if you can put 2 and 2 together and you say, hey, Conquerors of the Atlas, we've got new bosses to take down, and hey, we've got a Metamorph League that's all about combining bosses and getting rewards from boss killing. You put those things together, what do you get? You get League starting with a Shadow Saboteur and scaling your traps to infinity and beyond, and then eventually taking down as many bosses as your wonderful exilic heart so desires. So I would highly, highly recommend this. I personally have played through several different Lightning Trapper builds. I think the best way to juice your damage on any of these builds is to get to Pain Attunement as fast as possible, so that way you can go low life and get a whole bunch of extra damage. It's just a bunch of free extra damage, and because you're a trapper, you shouldn't really be taking any damage anyway. Stuff should be blowing up on the edge of your screen, depending on your playstyle anyway. So if you're able and excited to take down bosses, then this is going to be a build for you. All right, our last and final build for Metamorph League that we're going to recommend as a starter is one of my own miscreations. It is, let's just say it's really fun. I played this build through most of Blight League, and I've even messed around with it on Standard since Blight League has wrapped up for the most part. This build originally started as a hardcore build. So those of you out there who play hardcore, maybe you're playing hardcore in 3.9, or maybe you're playing softcore, but you want to push as far as you can go. This build is an exceptional way of doing this. This build focused on min-maxing the heck out of every defense possible. So we're talking about, I believe I pushed it up to around like 82 or 83 all max resistances is what we pushed to. In terms of physical damage mitigation, we were capped at 90% physical damage mitigation. In terms of our armor, thousands of armor in order to take advantage of Vol Molten Shell and the extra HP that gives. And then a whole bunch of endurance charges, a whole bunch of chaos mitigation. I don't remember exactly what the total was on the chaos mitigation. I think we got up to like 60 or 70%, but I don't think I was able to cap it quite yet. This is a strength stacking zombie guide that plays through the Juggernaut Ascendancy. You might say, well, Iron, why would you want to play through the Juggernaut? Well, for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't want to play Necro in 3.8 because I figured everyone else in the entire league would be playing it. We just got the recent announcement from Chris that there's no massive Ascendancy overhauls that are coming in 3.9. So, that being said, there are most likely going to be some Ascendancies that will get nerfed. Probably Necromancer, which like 40% of the league had a Necromancer at one point or another during Blight League, so probably Necromancer will see some tweaks or some nerfs. So I wanted to stay away from Necromancer in Blight League, and I would recommend that you stay away from Necromancer in 3.9, just as we're planning, until patch notes come out. Until patch notes come out and confirm that Necromancer is not going to get slapped with the nerf stick, I would plan on not playing Necromancer if you're playing a Summoner. Or, of course, you can still play a Necromancer. They're still going to be incredibly strong. It's just they won't be quite as strong if they do end up getting nerfed during 3.9 as they were, you know, as strong in 3.8. So, other things that are exciting about this particular Juggernaut. Some of the uniques that you can use, I was using an I can't ever say the name of the sword, but the Omnivorax, I think. It's the one that just gives you, like, 60 all resistance. Well, you can use that. You can shield charge around, you can leap slam, you can do whatever it is that you want. If you'd rather use a two-handed maul and then scale up a whole bunch of minion mods onto that, you can do that if you'd rather do that. I, of course, was using Sapphire's Frame on my shield, and so that's where we're getting a whole bunch of additional maximum resistances from, and it was absolutely outstanding for us. The way how you'll want to level this is, for Ascendancies, is to go unflinching, unrelenting, unbreakable, and then unstoppable as your Uber. This gives you a bunch of endurance charge generation, a bunch of free HP, effective HP with all of the endurance charges that you're going to have, and the reduction of damage that you will have from unbreakable, along with, if you get a really, really good chest piece, you will just go bonkers with the amount of armor that your character is capable of having. Now, zombies are incredibly strong. I have, again, played this all the way through 3.8, and I've tested it. This thing can take down Shaper in no time flat. It's fantastic. You just group your zombies up, you convocate them all on top of Shaper, they all, do their basic attack, and then away they go. If you're playing in Standard, of course, then you've got access to things like Violent Dead, but Violent Dead doesn't drop in League anymore, so that's a legacy item and really doesn't matter much. Anyway, if you're interested in this build, or any of these other builds that we've taken a look at, again, all of the links to the build guides are down below in the video description for your viewing and reading pleasure. For this particular guide showing this off with the strength stacking Thick Zombomancer, there are several different League Start streams that I actually showed off leveling this character and playing this character through maps. So if you're looking for something just with an extended amount of gameplay footage, that you can then go in and replicate yourself. Would highly recommend this particular build. All right, so that's enough of my suggestions. What about you? What will you be looking to league start with in 3.9 Metamorph League? And maybe what would you suggest for others to league start with in 3.9 Metamorph League? You've heard my opinions, but I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. Secondly, what league will you be playing in 3.9? Are you going to be playing hardcore? Are you going to be playing softcore? Are you going to be playing SSF? Will you partake in the hardcore SSF kill event that is coming out that's being hosted by Zizaran and his entire team over at Method? But which league is it that you're going to be playing in? Because oftentimes the league that you're going to be playing in can really help determine what league starter it is that you're going to use. Lastly, what are your goals for 3.9 Metamorph League? Do you have a particular goal? Do you want to take down the Awakener? Do you want to push a build to level 100? Is there a particular item that you're trying to farm for, or a particular amount of currency that you're trying to hit? Anyway, drop us a comment down below and let us know responses to those 3 questions. And I, of course, will get back to you as I'm able to throughout the day and throughout the league in response to your comments. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I hope 3.9 Metamorph League is the league when a Mirror of Calandra drops for you. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.